You know, the greatest books out there will always grant you another perspective when you read them anew. And for me, Vagabond is definitely one of these books. No man ever steps in the river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man. This quote is by Heraclitus, by the way, and he describes pretty much exactly what I just wanted to say. Now, when you read something just for the information, like a newspaper for example, there's simply no reason to read it twice. It differs quite a lot when you read something to learn, when you study something. In this case, you will read the thing a couple of times. Repetition helps with remembering and learning. But if you read something with a philosophical approach, to experience escapism, to gather new ideas, to get yourself into a creative state, or simply to enjoy entertainment, reading a book twice or more should make you perceive the story from different angles every time you read it. Otherwise, what would be the reason to read something again? A good book grows with you. That's exactly what separates good literature from bad literature. And I think Vagabond is the perfect example for this. So, with the new deluxe edition from Vagabond just around the corner, I thought it was a good idea to start this story anew. Right at the beginning of the narrative, we've got a protagonist who's merely interested in becoming invincible under the sun. And along the way he becomes someone who realizes that there's actually more to life than just being the strongest. And that true strength is not measured by the man you defeated. So it's basically a story about letting go of traumatic experiences, of things that shape us and push us into a certain direction. And ultimately it's about realizing our own true essence. And just like Musashi, everybody of us will face existential questions at least once in a lifetime. And Vagabond makes it especially easy to realize where you are in your own life, because it presents you so many characters you can relate to. It's like a constant reminder to reflect upon our own lives. If you didn't know it already, this is not just a simple samurai tale, it is actually quite a philosophical journey. This is a book you can not only read but also feel it. Your very own experiences will shape the story for you. So every time you read Vagabond anew, you might face another realization you made in your own life as well. And with every new read, you will relate to some of the characters more than others. What they have in common are the choices they have to make in life. And so you can see what choice leads down which path. So the book actually asks you to comprehend different perspectives. And the character you are rooting for right now might not even be the same character 10 years down the line. So here's one of my favorite quotes from the books. And it's from a conversation between Musashi and Takuan. Musashi, you've become kinder. You're getting stronger, I see. All truly strong people are kind. And when you think about this quote, it makes perfect sense. Because being kind might not be that easy after all. For someone like Musashi, who grew up with a very violent father, brutality was just a natural given. And letting go of such a destructive pattern is pretty hard. It means to destroy the ego you have built to survive. And you have to question everything you've learned up until now, while at the same time deleting the programming you received. In the later chapters of the story, we can see Musashi trying to let go of the ideas that consumed him. He makes the realization that the I does not really exist, and that he is truly nobody. Therefore, being stronger than anyone doesn't matter to him anymore. Inside, I am infinite. Within emptiness exists everything. This reminds me of a quote by Bruce Lee, who said, "The usefulness of the cup is its emptiness." Musashi becomes more and more aware of his own infinity, and that everything he believed in restricted him. And instead of being driven by his fears and wants, he's now focused on the present moment, in the here and now. Now with this realization comes another thing into play. Have I felt like I'm pointing the sword at myself as I fight others? Now when everything is one and everyone is here for the experience of the world itself, there's simply no reason to kill one another. So Musashi realizes that with every man he kills, he injures himself as well. Within the manga, we can witness Musashi struggling to let go of his past beliefs. This inner monologue is depicted by a wave coming out of his body and surrounding him. Every time there's someone to fight, it talks to him. It's like an inner voice constantly trying to lure him back into battle. And sometimes, just for a brief moment, it takes the shape of people he has encountered in his life. People that pushed him on the road he went down. And even though we see the main protagonist struggle with it, ultimately he's becoming better and better at pushing it away. He's finally controlling his emotions, and therefore he can exist right now in the present moment. Becoming invincible under the sun is nothing but an idea, just a word. And even though that idea granted him great power, ultimately it created suffering, and it restricted him from experiencing life fully. So it's not really a tale about fighting, but a story about healing. And therefore we are constantly reminded of how important it is to smile. Another favorite quote of mine is Takehiko telling Musashi this: "You are the weakest person in the village." And it's just something that makes you think. Musashi's wish to become the strongest and to be known and to prove his strength to the world is merely a result of fear. And to hide itself, fear calls out to hatred. We've got his protagonist becoming physically stronger along the way, but Takehiko actually tells him that he's the weakest because he's driven by fear. And I really love the message behind this. I mean, you can be the strongest physically for sure, but at the same time you can also be mentally weak. It all depends on what it is that drives you. Which brings me to another conversation between Takehiko and Musashi. Preoccupied with a single leaf, you won't see the tree. Preoccupied with a single tree, you'll miss the entire forest. Don't be preoccupied with a single spot. See everything in its entirety, effortlessly. That is what it truly means to see. Later on, Musashi realizes that invincibility is nothing but a mirage. Being on your own and fighting for yourself only becomes relatively easy once you get used to it. So even though it might describe hell for others, for you it's just a comfort zone. And we all know that a comfort zone is not a good place to dwell in. So Musashi has got to let his guard down, to be open to the world, and to be kind and to smile more. And this journey is by far harder than every fight he ever fought. It even brings him to his knees, begging for help. And it's not even for his own sake, but to help others. And don't get me wrong, becoming physically strong is a great thing, but being kind to others, now that is what makes you a real badass. But for many of us, this means we need a healing process first. And again, we can see it happening with Musashi. But seeing Musashi fight for others or getting down on his knees for others made me really happy when I read the manga. Because let's be honest here for a second, it's one of the hardest things to ask for help. And this brings me to another quote, which is actually not by Takehiko or Musashi himself. Unmarried, without any friends, only the sword. A life dedicated to the sword. There was a time when I considered myself invincible. But now I am old and I have nothing. These words are spoken by Jisei. This is a profound realization being displayed here. If one is destined to grow old and witness the physical strength slowly wither away, one might feel as if one is left with nothing, and that all of the fighting restricted one from living a full life. Life can indeed be perceived as a concatenation of struggles, but if somebody sees nothing else than this, he does not embrace life fully. Becoming physically strong will only get you so far, but beyond that, there's not much experience to be made.
Your physical strength tops out at only so much, but your spirit power can reach limitless heights with proper training.
Within the narrative about Kojiro, we are also introduced to Jisei. He's basically an old man waiting for his death, and he lives in regret of devoting his life to the sword. Then suddenly, while he's waiting for death, a little boy comes into his life. And therefore Jisei found a reason to live a little longer. And even though he doesn't want to teach the way of the sword to the boy, he spars with him almost every day. He does not want him to live the same life as he did and to face the same regrets he faces. But the soul of the boy is attached to this sword. Kojiro grows up and masters the way of the sword. And so finally the day arrived where Kojiro left. Now, before his death, Jisei realizes that his devotion to the sword was absolutely worth it, because it allowed him to leave behind such a great swordsman as Kojiro. And this ultimately brings me to the last quote I want to feature within this video. Life has no value. Truly right, it has no value. If you think only of yourself, it has no value. Once more, this was a conversation between Takuan and Musashi. Being a lone wolf until the very end means avoiding a lot of experiences, good and bad. And no matter how great the benefits might be, you won't be really able to help and support others. It means not having many commitments or even chains attached to you. And this can be a great feeling. But in the end, it doesn't provide a reason why to live life at all. If you haven't created anything in this world besides your ego, the opportunity of the good deeds you could have done will die with you. And this truth is pretty existential. It doesn't necessarily mean having a marriage or having children. It means being here now in the present moment, while at the same time not being focused on yourself only. In Vagabond we can witness Jisei experiencing exactly this. For the first time, he's caring for another human being more than for himself. And even though he regarded his life as a failure, in the end all of his life was worth living. Because he was there for a boy who otherwise would have died. And his legacy will live on, as he helped the boy to become a master in swordsmanship. Physical superiority is actually just a fragment of strength. And it's exactly the one that will leave us the fastest. Vagabond teaches a lot. It's one of those series that you can read twice or more. It makes you reflect on your own life, and it may grant you a different outlook on life itself. So at least to me, Vagabond is a philosophical masterpiece. For every realization a character makes, this story delivers another character that simply stands his ground. And the book doesn't point a finger at them. It simply tells you that there's another point of view as well. And the most interesting thing of them all is that with every new read, different parts from the story stand out. So I'm already excited how I will perceive the story 10 years down the line. But what do you think about reading a book twice? Is there a specific fictional story you read on a regular basis? And most importantly, what is your favorite quote from Vagabond? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Now, that's it for today, and I'll see you next time.